A lot of people, they give sales a bad rep. What comes to your head when you have to define what is sales?
Yeah, I think that's the perfect place to start, so everybody's on the same page, because there is a lot of bad rap when it comes to what selling is. My definition of sales is you have a prospect or potential customer that has a need. That need needs to be filled. And so when you talk about a person that can sell ice to Eskimos, that implies that they are pulling one over on the client. That to me is not sales. That to me is stealing. That to me is possibly over negotiating, whatever the case may be. But to me, sales is finding out a prospect's pain and presenting a solution that fills the need. And so when you look at it that way, it's a win-win, and that's what sales should be.
Yeah, that's what makes client retention. I think that's what everybody gets wrong about sales. Like, there's so much lifetime value in a client, and if you just sell the ice to the Eskimo, pull one over them fast, ain't never gonna see him again. You might have the money now, but you just lost them and everybody they know as a client, because you can't be 100% sure they're gonna tell everybody what you just did. So, with that definition set aside, what made you start this sales journey? Just give us a little bit of the context behind where does your knowledge and expertise come from?
Gotcha. Yeah, I've done, in my 35-year career, I've done just about everything you can do in sales. I started in a phone room selling telemarketing, selling printer ribbons back in the late 80s.
I don't even know what that is.
You don't know what a printer ribbon is, and you may not recall the late 80s either. But that's where it all started. And that's where I learned, in that phone room, I learned how to communicate in sales. And that became the guiding light for everything I did in sales going forward. It was the ability to uncover a pain and to fill a need. From there, I went into sales management. I got into outside sales or person-to-person sales. I did sales training. I did sales hiring and firing, an executive level, and then a corporate speaker as well. So I've done just about everything you can do in the sales arena, all starting with how do you communicate at a professional level with a prospect that has a need and a pain.
And that's really what sales comes down to. Communication is a big part of it. And to the people that's been watching us, what I normally say sales is about is likability and trust. And I mentioned this to Darrin on our first call, and I know he has a different take on it. So why don't you give us what is your take on what is sales made up of from the foundation?
Yeah, so tell me the two words that you used as well, because I don't know that it's different, but it might be a little wider.
Yeah.
What were your two words?
Well, for me, it's likability and trust. Nobody buys
Likability, that's
yeah.
right. Okay, so I agree with both of those things. Likability is extremely important, but how far do you go with your rapport building in that first meeting? That is something I always train on, because I've seen salespeople spend a lot of time becoming likable and then losing all that time on the end when you really had to prove value and then prove that you were the right solution to their need. So when I train sales, when we start with rapport building, I keep it rather light, because my feeling is if the prospect needed a friend, there are websites to go to find friends and to find dates and all of those things. They're looking for value. So if you focus on value out of the gates, then I believe that's a better place to start. And from that, trust will be built, because I do agree with, of your two things, likability and trust, I agree with both of them, but trust is tantamount. It is absolutely paramount. It's the most important piece of the puzzle. And so to do that, you have to prove value. So it starts with me with how well do you collaborate? And by collaborating with the prospect, you have an opportunity to work together on solutions that are win-win. If you start off by proving your value or proving how you're different, then the prospect is going to push back a little bit, because they really need help understanding what's available in the early stages of the sale. Once you have an understanding together what their needs, what their pain is, and they understand what their options are, then you can move to proving your value, proving your differentiation, offering your solution options, and then closing the sale as well. That all comes together a lot smoother if you start with helping them understand what their pains are and what options are available to them.
How do you go about getting a prospect to open up to you? And some people in conversation will reveal their pain at some level, and then we always want to go deeper and figure out what's really hurting in business. How do you go about doing that or teaching people how to do that?
I believe that question taps into the most important part of the sale, and that's how well you uncover pain by asking questions. There is nothing more important in the sales process than how well you uncover pain by asking questions. So how do we go about that? It's that secondary and tertiary question that works best. So you ask a question such as, what issue did you have? And they say it's X, Y, Z. The secondary question is, so how does that issue affect your life? Or how does it affect your business? And then they answer that question. And sometimes they're realizing for the very first time just how their problems are affecting their life because you asked. And then you can ask a couple more to drill down to make sure there's a real understanding. But the key to that, Mike, is at no point when you're asking questions do you sell your service or your product. So if they say, oh, I've had a problem working with vendors like yourself because of X, Y, Z. And then you say, oh boy, do I understand that issue. That's why we don't do this, that, or the other. And we only do these three things. The point being is stick to asking questions and asking questions only until there's a complete understanding as to the prospect's pain and for them to understand the options that are available to them.
Well, that's really interesting, Darrin. So the idea is that we keep asking questions instead of offering information. We keep asking until we figure we're pretty close to their deep pain, right?
Correct.
Wow. Yeah, I think I've been making a mistake on that because sometimes I share information before I'm at the deep pain. So I think I've just learned something here.
That's the biggest problem in sales, because if we understand there's two stages that a prospect goes through. The first stage is understanding the options that are available. And the second stage is, okay, why you? Most salespeople don't understand that first stage exists. And in that first stage, the prospect does not want to know about you. You come across as self-serving when you start selling yourself too soon. But once you've collaborated with them and they understand the options that are available to them, at that point, they want to know, they have to know why you. And that's when you sell yourself. But at that point, they're open to it. Prior to that, it just feels self-serving to them. And a lot of salespeople lose the sale at that first stage because they don't realize the first stage exists.